Once upon a time in Port Harcourt, in the hot chaos of Mile 1 Motor Park, a boy named Ikenna stood barefoot on the dusty pavement. He was only 16, tall for his age, his eyes always heavy not from sleep, but from carrying the weight of struggle far too young. His slippers were torn, letting the burning ground kiss his feet with every step. That morning was like all the others. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and roasted corn. Conductors shouted names of towns, passengers argued over fares, cakey drivers leaned on their horns, and through it all, Ikenna's voice rose above the noise. Pure water, cold pure water. A black bucket hung from his thin arms, sweat dripping into his eyes as he prayed to sell enough to buy a single plate of rice before sunset. But then something unusual cut through the chaos. A long, black SUV rolled slowly into the park. It was too polished, too silent, too out of place among the battered buses and shouting hawkers. People stepped back to stare. The tinted glass slid down with the patience of someone who never rushed. Inside sat a woman. She wore dark glasses that swallowed half her face, but her beauty was undeniable: smooth chocolate skin, lips painted wine red, hair that shimmered even in the dusty air. Yet what froze Ikenna wasn't her face. It was her arms, muscular, sculpted, like someone who lifted iron every day. Shoulders broad, waist small, strength wrapped in elegance. She pointed directly at him. "You, come." Ikenna looked around, confused. "Me? Yes, you." Her voice was calm, steady like a teacher calling a stubborn student. And in that moment, the boy who had nothing was about to step into a story darker and bigger than he could ever imagine. Life in Port Harcourt did not show mercy. For a boy like Ikenna, every day started before the sun even considered rising. His uncle's wooden house creaked as he stepped out with his bucket, his voice already dry from shouting yesterday. He tied a torn piece of cloth around his head to catch the sweat, then walked the long, dusty road to the motor park. The market stalls were waking up, sellers laying out second-hand shoes, tomatoes stacked on trays, fried akara sizzling in pans. But Ikenna had no stall, no seat. His job was to walk, to call, to beg customers for a few coins in exchange for a sachet of cold water. Pure water. Cold pure water. His voice echoed. Sometimes passengers waved him off. Sometimes they bought one bag. Most of the time, they didn't even look at him. By 9 o'clock, the heat was already pressing like an iron. The smell of petrol mixed with smoke from roasted plantains. He wiped his forehead and kept walking. He prayed silently, "Just let me sell one full bag before noon." That was when the black SUV appeared. It rolled in slowly, too smooth, too clean, for a place where dust never settled. People stared. Drivers cursed. Some even laughed, saying, "This one don miss road." The window slid down. Behind it sat a woman, older, confident, hidden by dark glasses. Her lips curved, her head tilted slightly, then her finger pointed straight at Ikenna. "You, come." He froze. For a second he thought maybe she was pointing to someone else. But no, her hand was steady. Him. Heart beating fast, Ikenna stepped closer, his slippers scraping the pavement. He feared maybe he was blocking the wrong car, maybe she would report him to the police. But when she removed her glasses, he saw eyes sharp like honey under sunlight. "What's your name?" she asked. He lowered his head. "Ikenna. You live around here?" "Yes, madam. With my uncle." "And your parents?" "My mother died. My father left before I could know him." For a moment, she said nothing. Her gaze was long, steady, unblinking. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out crisp Naira notes. 10,000. She pressed it into his hand. Ikenna's chest tightened. "Madam, I didn't do anything." She smiled. "I know. That's why I'm giving you. Eat real food today. Don't sleep on the floor tonight." Before he could whisper thanks, the window rolled up. The SUV glided away like it had never been there. Ikenna stood frozen, his palm shaking with the weight of the money. 10,000 Naira. Enough to feed him for weeks. Enough to buy slippers without holes. Enough to make him believe maybe life could change. But back home that night, Uncle Ibuka's eyes grew sharp the moment he saw the notes. "Where did you get this?" Ikenna stammered, told him about the woman in the SUV. Ibuka leaned back, then laughed, loud and rough. "So a fine madam just gave you 10,000? Just like that?" "I swear, uncle." She said nothing else. He snatched the money, counting it twice. "Maybe your suffering face finally paid off," he sneered. "Pray she comes back tomorrow. If she does, your life might just turn around." Ikenna lay awake that night on the thin mat, staring at the zinc roof. The money was gone, but the memory of her eyes, her voice, stayed burning in his mind. For the first time in years, hope and fear walked into his heart together. 2 days later, the heat at Mile 1 Motor Park was no different. The buses still honked like angry beasts, women still shouted the prices of groundnuts and fried fish, and Ikenna still dragged his bucket of water through the crowd. But inside him, something had shifted. He could not shake off the memory of the black SUV or the woman with strong arms who spoke to him like he mattered. He had told himself it was a one-time miracle. People like her did not return to places like this. Yet when the sun was hanging high and the dust turned the air into haze, he saw it again, the same black SUV rolling silently through the gate. The same tinted window slid down. Her eyes were waiting for him. "Come," she said again. His legs trembled as he walked closer. He tried to bow, tried to show respect, but his heart was drumming too loud. This time she didn't hold out cash. Instead, she nodded toward the seat beside her. A driver stepped out, handed him a nylon bag, heavy in his arms. "Open it," she said. Ikenna carefully pulled the knot loose. The smell hit him, first jollof rice, fried chicken, chilled drinks. Beneath the food, folded neatly, was a brand new t-shirt, still smelling of the shop. He lifted his eyes. "Madam, why?" She gave a half smile, the kind of smile that carried secrets. "Because you look like someone who has been forgotten for too long." He swallowed hard, unsure if she was blessing him or binding him. "Eat," she added softly. "Don't let hunger steal your strength." Before he could answer, the window rolled back up. The SUV drifted away, leaving the dust swirling in her wake. That night, when he reached home, his uncle Ibuka wasted no time tearing into the bag. He scooped fried chicken with bare hands, chewing like a man starved, and washed it down with the cold drink meant for Ikenna. "This woman," Ibuka muttered between bites, "she knows how to treat people. Did she say what she wants?" Ikenna shook his head. "Nothing. She just gave it." Ibuka's eyes narrowed, then lit with greed. "Then listen to me. If she comes again, ask her to marry you." Ikenna almost choked on his sip of soda. "Uncle, she is." "Don't uncle me," Ibuka snapped. "How many women like that drive into motor parks handing out money and food? Look at yourself. 16 years old, still carrying water, still wearing slippers with holes big enough for rats to pass through. A woman like that wants you? Say yes." "But uncle, she is older." Ibuka slammed the plastic plate on the table. "Older? She's rich. She's powerful. You think your mates are doing better? Half of them are still begging for gari. You, my boy, have been chosen. Don't be stupid." The words burned Ikenna's ears. He turned his face away, but inside his heart was chaos. Chosen? Was that what this was? Or was he being tricked into something he could not yet see? That night, while Ibuka snored on his raffia mat, Ikenna lay awake again. The ceiling looked darker than usual, the night sounds heavier. He remembered her eyes calm but sharp. He remembered her arms too strong for a woman her age. He remembered the weight of the bag in his hand, the taste of food he had never known. And he asked himself, why me? The next morning, as he carried his bucket back to the park, the voices around him sounded different. Hawkers shouted. Passengers argued. But he felt like all of it was far away, as though the world had already changed. He looked down at his new t-shirt, the first one in years without holes or stains. It clung to him awkwardly, but it was soft, clean, a sign that his life was shifting into a direction he didn't understand. At the park, some boys laughed at him. See pure water boy with designer shirt. But others stared with envy. Ikena didn't fight back. He just kept selling, but deep down, a storm was rising. He knew she would come again. And when she did, nothing in his life would remain the same. The third time she came, the air itself seemed to pause. By then, even the conductors at Mile 1 whispered about the black SUV that kept appearing. Some joked that it belonged to a politician. Others said it was a church woman recruiting boys for choir. But when the tinted glass rolled down again and those honey-colored eyes searched the crowd, Ikena knew she was there for him alone. He walked forward, his hands trembling, his shirt clinging with sweat. The drivers stopped honking. A few hawkers leaned close, pretending to adjust their trays just to watch. Everyone felt something unusual in the air. This time Madame Chica didn't hand him food or money. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice low, steady, and dangerous in its calm. "Ikena, do you want to leave this kind of life?" The words pierced him deeper than hunger ever had. His throat went dry. He nodded. "Yes, madam." "Do you trust me?" she asked. Her eyes were softer now, not sharp like the first day, almost motherly. His lips parted. The motor park noise faded. He could hear his own heart beating. Trust her? He barely knew her name, yet she had fed him more than his uncle had in years. She had looked at him as if he mattered. "Yes, madam," he whispered. She leaned even closer, the sunlight catching the edge of her glasses. "Then marry me." The words landed like thunder. Ikena's mouth opened, but no sound came. Around him, a few boys gasped. A woman carrying bananas almost dropped her tray. "Mary, you?" His voice cracked. She repeated slowly, like a teacher testing a student. "Marry me. I will take care of you. You will never suffer again." Ikena looked down at his slippers, at the holes that let the dust cut his toes. He thought of nights sleeping on the floor, the rumbling in his stomach when there was no dinner, the sound of Uncle Ebuka's laughter whenever he begged for a little food. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice shaking. Her face didn't flinch. "Yes." Silence stretched. The conductors began calling passengers again, pretending not to listen, but every ear was tuned to that SUV. In Ikena's mind, Ibuka's words replayed. "If a rich woman wants you, say yes." He imagined coming home with food every day, with shoes that didn't hurt his feet, with a bed softer than mats on the floor. He imagined never hearing his uncle's scorn again. But he also imagined whispers, laughter from neighbors, boys at the park mocking him forever. A boy of 16 marrying a woman old enough to be his grandmother. His chest tightened. "Why me?" he asked. Her lips curved into a smile that revealed nothing. "Because you are different. Most boys your age are loud, foolish, proud. But you are quiet. You carry pain in your eyes. That pain makes you strong." He wanted to run. He wanted to stay. He wanted to scream that it didn't make sense. But life never waited for people who asked too many questions. Finally, he nodded, so small it almost wasn't visible. Her smile widened. "Tomorrow," she said firmly. "I have already made arrangements." When the SUV rolled away, leaving only dust and stunned silence, Ikena stood there shaking. He wasn't sure if he had just agreed to salvation or to a cage. That night, Uncle Ibuka clapped his hands like a man who had just won the lottery. "You see? Didn't I tell you? This is God's favor. My boy is now the husband of a queen." "But uncle," Ikena whispered, "she is old." Ibuka's eyes flashed with greed. "And very beautiful. Richer than anyone in this street. Keep your mouth shut and wear whatever she tells you. This is not suffering. This is blessing." But while Ibuka celebrated, Ikena lay awake. The zinc roof rattled, the night insects hummed, and he stared into the dark. He thought of his mother, long gone. He thought of sleeping outside on wooden benches. He thought of Chica's voice, steady as stone, "Marry me." He pressed his palms against his face. It didn't feel real. Yet the truth was clear. Tomorrow, he would belong to her. The wedding came faster than a breath. No drums, no dancing, no family members filling the yard. It was not the kind of wedding boys in the village dreamed of, with goat pepper, soup, and girls in bright wrappers laughing under canopies. Instead, it was a small, quiet office in Port Harcourt. The walls smelled of old paper, the fan squeaked as it turned, and a man in a faded suit sat with a pen in hand, ready to stamp documents. Madame Chica arrived in style. Her SUV slid to a stop, and out she stepped, wrapped in a long golden gown that shimmered even in the weak light. The cloth clung to her strong shoulders, her arms bare, muscles flexing as if to remind the world that she was not an ordinary woman. Behind her stood two men in black suits, tall and stiff, their faces as empty as statues. They did not smile. They did not blink. They were simply there, shadows following their mistress. Ikenna wore a grey suit that she had bought the night before. It was too long at the sleeves, too big at the waist, but still, when he looked at himself in the mirror, he saw something new. He looked like somebody important, even if only borrowed. The registrar cleared his throat. "Do you, Ikenna, take this woman, Chica, as your lawful wife?" For a heartbeat, the world went silent. The pen tapped the desk. The fan squeaked. His hands trembled. He felt the eyes of the guards boring into him, felt the weight of Ibuka's greed waiting outside. 2 seconds passed. Then 3. "Yes," he said, voice barely audible. The registrar nodded quickly, relieved that the silence had broken. Papers were signed, stamps thumped against the desk, and with that, it was official. A boy of 16 was now the husband of a woman old enough to be his grandmother. When they stepped outside, the street did not celebrate. There was no ululation, no dancing, just the sound of passing cars and curious stares from strangers who paused, trying to make sense of the sight of a fragile boy in a borrowed suit beside a woman who looked like a warrior queen. Uncle Ibuka was waiting under a mango tree. He clapped his hands, his teeth flashing. "I told you, didn't I? This is blessing. My nephew, married into wealth." But Ikenna couldn't smile. The golden gown beside him shone too bright, too heavy. Inside the SUV, as they drove away from the registrar's office, Madame Chica turned her face to him. Her eyes softened, lips curving into something that might have been warmth, might have been warning. "You belong to me now," she whispered. The words froze his chest. He forced a smile, nodded, but inside, something cold crept through his veins. The drive was long, the road lined with shops selling spare parts and hawkers chasing buses. But none of it reached him. His ears heard only her words. When they finally passed through the tall gates of her estate, Ikenna's breath caught. The compound was vast, walls painted so white they seemed to glow. The driveway stretched far, lined with flowers too perfect to belong in the dusty city. The mansion rose ahead like something from a dream, windows tall, roof sharp, a house that seemed to look down on anyone who approached. The guards saluted as the SUV rolled in. Ibuka clapped again from the back seat, laughing like a man who had just found gold. "My boy, you are a king now." But Ikenna could not shake the feeling that he had stepped not into a palace, but into a cage. That night, while the household lights glowed behind heavy curtains, while Ibuka stuffed his belly with food he had not paid for, Ikenna sat in his new room, staring at the ceiling. On the bed was a mattress so wide, 4 boys could sleep without touching. Beside it, a flat-screen TV larger than the blackboard at his old school. The fridge hummed softly, filled with drinks and snacks. He had never touched such things before. He touched the pillow, soft as clouds, then whispered to himself, "What have I done?" From somewhere deep in the house, footsteps echoed. Heavy, steady, unhurried. They did not sound like joy. They sounded like chains. And in his heart, Ikenna wondered if this marriage was truly salvation or the beginning of his end. Ikenna did not wake up to the rooster's crow or the shouts of his uncle, calling him lazy. He woke up to silence, a silence so thick it felt like a blanket. The air in the room was cool, whispering from a standing air conditioner. The mattress beneath him was soft, so soft he sank into it like he was lying on clouds. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. For a moment, he thought it was still a dream. The walls were painted, cream, smooth and spotless. The curtains moved gently with the breeze. A wardrobe stood tall against the wall, its wood polished until it shone. On the small table beside the bed was a new phone, still in its box. Ikenna's chest tightened. He had slept in a room larger than his uncle's entire house. He had woken up without hunger gnawing at his stomach, without dust on his skin. He whispered to himself, "So it's true. I am married." A knock came at the door. It opened slowly, and Madame Chica stepped in. She wore a silk robe, white as fresh milk, tied around her waist. Her hair was brushed back, her skin glowing as if she had bathed in light. "Good morning, husband," she said with a smile. Ikenna jumped from the bed. "Good morning, Ma." He corrected himself quickly. "Good morning. You slept well?" "Yes." His voice was small, uncertain. "Good," she said, stepping closer. Her hand touched his face lightly, her fingers warm but heavy. "You are safe here. No one will shout at you. No one will beat you. This is your home now." He nodded, unsure whether to smile or bow. "Come," she said. "Breakfast is ready." When he followed her downstairs, his breath caught. The dining table looked like something from a hotel. Plates of fried yam, bowls of pap steaming gently, loaves of bread stacked neatly, fresh fruits cut into perfect shapes. A jug of orange juice sat in the center, glowing under the lights. Ikenna sat slowly, almost afraid to touch anything. He had never seen so much food set before one person. He glanced at Chica. She was now dressed in black gym clothes, tight leggings, and a sleeveless top that showed her sculpted arms. She looked like someone preparing for battle, not breakfast. "Eat," she said firmly. "I don't like people starving in my house." He picked a piece of yam, dipped it in the egg sauce, and took a bite. His eyes widened. The food melted on his tongue, the pepper balanced perfectly. He didn't know food could taste like that. Madame Chica sipped her juice through a straw, watching him. "You're a quiet one," she said. I'm just not used to this," he answered softly. "To what?" He hesitated, then said, "To food, to bed, to peace." She smiled, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You'll get used to it. That's why I chose you." Her words sent a shiver through him. Chose? As if he was picked from a market stall. "Why me?" he asked before he could stop himself. She leaned forward. "Because you are different. Most boys your age are reckless. They think the world owes them. But you," she pointed at his chest, "you carry pain, and pain teaches more than pride ever will." Ikenna lowered his gaze. He didn't want her to see the fear flickering inside. "Don't talk too much about it," she said softly. "I've already seen what I need to see." They ate in silence after that. Only the sound of cutlery filled the room. When she finished, she stood, wiping her lips with a cloth napkin. "I'm going to the gym room. Join me later if you want to stretch your body." He blinked. "You have a gym room?" Her lips curved. "A full one. I live by discipline. And now, so will you." She walked away, muscles shifting under her black top, her steps steady and sure. When she left, Ikenna leaned back in his chair. He looked at the table again, at the food untouched, at the fruit carved into neat patterns. He could eat all of it and still feel empty. Something about her words stayed pressing against his chest. "That's why I chose you." Later that day, curiosity pulled him around the house. He passed the kitchen, where 3 women in uniforms chopped vegetables in silence. They did not look at him, only bowed slightly. He passed a hallway lined with paintings of strange landscapes, none familiar, all foreign. Finally, he found the gym. His mouth fell open. Machines lined the walls, treadmills, dumbbells, weight benches. A punching bag swung gently as if someone had just left it. In the center, Madame Chica stood with a barbell across her shoulders. Her face was calm, her veins stood out, her muscles bulged with power. Ikenna stepped back quickly, heart pounding. He did not want to disturb her. He did not want to see more than he was allowed. Quietly, he walked away, the echo of her strength following him down the hall. The next morning, before Ikenna had even rubbed the sleep from his eyes, a knock came on his door. The same guard who never smiled stood there. "Madam is waiting." Downstairs, Madame Chica sat in the living room, dressed in a fitted green blouse and skirt that hugged her frame with elegance. Gold earrings glinted in her ears, Her eyes, sharp as always, softened when they landed on him. "Today," she said, "we go to the city. You need proper papers. You are my husband now, and I don't want anyone questioning that." Ikenna swallowed. Husband. The word still felt heavy in his mouth. The SUV was already waiting outside. As they drove through the city, his eyes widened at the tall buildings and painted billboards. He had been to Port Harcourt many times, but never in a car with leather seats, never with the streets rushing past like a film. At the government office, people stared openly. Some whispered, nudging each other as they watched a muscular woman in fine clothes walk hand in hand with a thin boy in an oversized shirt. Their eyes said everything their mouths dared not. What kind of marriage is this? The clerk at the desk blinked twice when Chika placed the papers before him. You are registering your husband?" "Yes," she replied coolly. "Is there a problem?" The man's lips twitched. "No, madam. None at all." His hands shook slightly as he stamped the documents. Next was the bank. The marble floors gleamed under bright lights. The air smelled of polish and perfume. A manager in a navy suit rushed forward, smiling too wide. "Madam Chika, an honor." She nodded. "This is my husband. I want a joint account opened." The manager's smile faltered. His eyes darted to Ikenna, then back to her. "Your husband." Her gaze sharpened like a blade. "Do you have a problem with that?" No, of course not." The man laughed nervously, already pulling forms. Throughout it all, Ikenna stayed silent. His palms were sweaty, his throat dry. He could feel every stare burning into his skin. Even the customers sitting in line could not stop glancing. Some smirked, some frowned, others simply froze in disbelief. As the signatures were placed and the documents finalized, Madam Chika leaned close and whispered, "Do not speak unless I tell you. Silence is safer." He nodded quickly, clutching the pen as he scrawled his name beside hers. By the end of the day, he had a new ID card, a bank account, and even a fresh phone line registered under her name. But as they stepped back into the SUV, Ikenna's chest tightened. Every paper bound him tighter, every stare reminded him that he no longer belonged to himself. The city passed by in a blur of taxis and market stalls, yet none of it felt real. He stared out the window, watching children his age run barefoot in the street, laughing as they chased a plastic ball. He envied their freedom. They had nothing, but at least they still had themselves. When they arrived back at the mansion, the guards opened the gates without question. The sun was sinking, painting the sky orange, but the house loomed even larger than before. Inside, Chika poured herself a glass of juice, then looked at him. "From today onward, you walk as my husband. People will talk. They will whisper. Ignore them. You are mine. That is all that matters." Ikenna nodded, his lips dry. He wanted to ask why, wanted to scream that it didn't make sense. But her eyes warned him. Her smile was kind, but behind it, a shadow waited. That night, as he lay in his wide bed, the papers sat on his table, proof of what had happened. His name, next to hers. His identity, rewritten. He touched the card lightly, then pulled his hand away as though it might burn him. The silence of the mansion pressed down on him. And deep inside, a whisper rose. "You are no longer Ikenna, the boy who sold water. You are someone else now. Someone trapped in her shadow." That night, Ikenna could not sleep. The mansion was too silent. Back in his uncle's house, the night was filled with noise, frogs croaking in the gutter, neighbors arguing, children crying, radios humming from different rooms. But here, the silence felt alive, pressing against his ears, making him hear the beat of his own heart too clearly. He tossed on the soft mattress, turned from one side to the other, but peace refused to come. The air was cool, yet his skin was damp with sweat. He sat up and stared at the ceiling. The lamp on his table glowed faintly, casting shadows that danced on the wall like things with a mind of their own. Finally, unable to bear it, he opened his door. The hallway stretched long and dim, lit by bulbs that seemed too weak for a house this grand. The air there was colder, sharper. He hugged himself as he stepped out barefoot, his feet sinking into the carpet. He walked slowly, listening. No voices, no footsteps, just the faint hum of electricity and the occasional creak of wood, as though the house was breathing. At the far end of the hallway stood a door unlike the others. It was taller, wider, painted black, with carvings etched deep into its surface shapes of snakes, birds, and twisted symbols he did not recognize. Even from a distance, the door seemed to give off its own chill, a warning to any who dared approach. Ikenna's steps slowed. His throat went dry. He had seen many doors in the mansion leading to bedrooms, storerooms, the gym, but none like this. He reached out, just to touch, just to feel if it was real. His fingers brushed the cold handle. A shock ran through him, like touching metal in the rain. He pulled his hand back quickly, breathing hard. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed behind him. Bare footsteps on the carpet. Ikenna spun around. Madame Chica was there. She was barefoot, her long black robe flowing around her like smoke. Her hair hung loose over her shoulders, and her eyes caught the dim light, glowing faintly like embers. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. Ikenna's lips trembled. I was just walking. Couldn't sleep." Her gaze dropped to the black door, then back to him. For a moment, her face showed nothing. No anger, no warmth, just unreadable stillness. "This part of the house is private," she said at last. "Never come here again unless I tell you to." He nodded quickly, fear prickling his skin. "Yes, I'm sorry." She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on his. "You are my husband now, Ikenna. That means you must trust me. No wandering, no questions." "I do trust you," he whispered, though the words tasted like ash in his mouth. Her hand brushed his cheek, warm but heavy. "Good. Then go back to bed. Tomorrow will be busy." She turned and glided down the hall, her robe trailing silently behind her. Ikenna stood frozen for a few seconds, his body stiff, his heart pounding like a drum. Then, with shaky steps, he hurried back to his room and shut the door. He pressed his back against it, breathing fast, his palms sweaty. He climbed into bed, but his eyes stayed wide open, staring into the dark. The image of the black door burned in his mind. The carvings, the chill, the way she appeared as if from nowhere. The night dragged on, heavy and endless. He heard footsteps again around 1 o'clock. This time, slower, steady, deliberate. He crept to his door, opened it a crack, and peeked. Madame Chica was walking barefoot down the hall. Her robe brushed the carpet, her hair loose, her back straight like a soldier on parade. She stopped at the black door, pulled a key from her robe, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The door shut softly behind her. For a moment, the hallway was silent again. But then a faint red glow leaked from under the door, flickering like firelight. Ikenna's stomach knotted. His breath came shallow. He closed his door quickly and climbed back into bed, covering himself with the blanket as if it could protect him. Sleep never came. Instead, he lay there all night, staring into the dark, replaying the scene over and over, the black door, the red glow, and Madame Chica's eyes that seemed to hold secrets too heavy for words. Morning came, but it did not feel like morning. The mansion was filled with light, yet everything seemed heavy. Ikenna sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the new phone that Madame Chica had given him. It still felt foreign in his hands, smooth and shining, too different from the cracked phones he used to see in the motor park. 4 days, he hadn't dared to call anyone. He had no friends left except one Obi, his childhood companion, the only boy who used to sit with him under the mango tree behind the school, the one who had shared roasted groundnuts with him when hunger nearly broke him. Ikenna scrolled through the contacts. He had no number saved, but Obi's voice lived in his memory. He dialed. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Hello?" Ikenna's throat tightened. "Obi, it's me." There was a pause, then a laugh of disbelief. "Ikenna, guy, where have you been?" "Your uncle told people you married one big woman," I said. "No, it's a lie. But is it true?" Ikenna closed his eyes. "It's true." Silence filled the line, then Obi's voice dropped lower. "You're joking." I'm not. He took a deep breath. Her name is Madame Chica. She is rich. She took me in. Another pause, longer this time. How old is she? Obi asked. She says 58, Ikenna whispered. What? Obi nearly shouted. Are you possessed? Bro, what are you doing? It's not like that, Ikenna said quickly. She has given me everything: food, clothes, my own room. I don't suffer anymore. But even as he spoke, his voice shook. He remembered the black door, the carvings, the red light seeping out like blood. Obi's tone hardened. Listen to me. People don't just pick a boy from the street and marry him. Not without reason. Something is wrong. Be careful. Don't eat too deep. Don't sleep too hard. And if anything feels off, leave. Promise me. Ikenna's eyes burned. I promise. They said goodbye, and he sat holding the phone, staring at the wall. The weight of Obi's warning pressed on him. Something is wrong. Later that afternoon, hunger drove him downstairs. The kitchen smelled of onions frying in palm oil. Inside, women in uniforms moved quickly, chopping, stirring, baking. The biggest among them was Auntie Mara, the head cook, short and round, always humming church songs as she worked. Ikenna cleared his throat. Good afternoon, Ma. She smiled without looking up. Good afternoon, sir. The word sir sounded strange in his ears. Nobody had ever called him that. He stepped closer. Can I ask you something? Her knife stopped mid-slice. Slowly, she raised her eyes to him. What is it? He lowered his voice. That door at the end of the hall. The black one. What is inside? Her face froze. The kitchen grew silent. Even the other women paused. For a moment, the only sound was the hiss of oil in the pan. Then Auntie Mara leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Ikenna's heart skipped. What do you mean? She glanced around quickly, as if afraid someone might be listening. Then she whispered again. Just enjoy your food, sleep well, and don't walk around at night. Before he could reply, she turned back to her chopping, humming louder this time, shutting the conversation like a slammed door. Ikenna stood frozen, the air around him suddenly thick. He wanted to push further, to demand the truth, but something in her eyes warned him knowledge was dangerous here. He walked back to his room, his legs heavy. He sat on the bed and stared at the phone again. The words repeated in his mind. Don't walk around at night. That evening, he ate dinner slowly, barely tasting the rice and fish before him. Madame Chica sat across the table, her gown deep red, her eyes calm. She spoke casually about exercise, about discipline, about living strong. Ikenna nodded when expected, but his mind was far away, drifting toward the black door. That night, sleep refused him again. At 1 o'clock, he heard it: the soft footsteps, the faint hum, the turning of a key. He didn't open his door this time. He just lay in bed, clutching his blanket, staring at the ceiling as his heart pounded. The house seemed alive, breathing through its walls, whispering in its silence. And deep inside, Ikenna knew. He was living in comfort, but comfort that carried a shadow. Something was hidden, and whether he wanted it or not, the shadow was reaching for him. The mansion slept heavy that night, but Ikenna's eyes refused to close. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence press against his ears. Every creak in the walls, every whisper of the wind outside felt like a voice calling him. His chest tightened with the memory of Auntie Mara's warning. Don't walk around at night. But curiosity had already rooted itself deep inside him. The black door haunted his mind like a drumbeat. What was she hiding? Why did she walk barefoot into that room every night, carrying a key close to her chest? At exactly 1 o'clock, the sound returned. Soft footsteps in the hallway. A faint hum, like a lullaby carried by a shadow. The click of a key turning in the lock. Ikenna slipped quietly from his bed. He pushed the door just enough to peek. Madame Chica was gliding down the corridor, her black robe trailing, her hair loose. She stopped at the black door, drew a key from her robe, and entered. The red glow seeped out again, staining the carpet with color that did not belong to this world. The door closed, and silence swallowed the hall. His heart hammered, But a plan had already taken shape in his mind. If he wanted to know the truth, he needed that key. He waited, breath shallow, until the glow under the door dimmed and her steps retreated down the hall hours later. When he was certain she had gone to her room, he crept out. The corridor was still, the air cold against his skin. He tiptoed until he reached her door. With trembling hands, he pushed it slightly. To his shock, it opened without resistance. The room was enormous, painted in deep purple. Perfume bottles lined a tall shelf. Mirrors covered the walls, reflecting the dim light of a single lamp. On a small table near the bed, he saw them her keys, resting carelessly, glinting in the dark. His hands shook as he picked them up. The cold metal pressed into his palm like a warning. He hurried back to the hallway, his legs weak beneath him. Each step felt louder than thunder. He stopped before the black door, the carvings seeming to move under the dim light. Snakes twisted, birds spread wings, strange shapes danced when his eyes lingered too long. With a deep breath, he fit the key into the lock. Click! The door creaked open, and the red glow washed over his face. He stepped inside. The air was hot, thick, smelling of smoke and something sweet that turned his stomach. Red cloth draped the walls, heavy and suffocating. The floor was marked with chalk, symbols, circles, triangles, lines that twisted into one another like a puzzle. Candles burned everywhere, some tall, some melted into stubs, their wax pooling like frozen blood. In the center stood a wooden table. On it lay photographs, hundreds of them. Ikenna froze. They were all boys. Boys his age, some smiling, some frightened, some looking straight at the camera with eyes full of fear. Their faces stared back at him from every angle, arranged in neat rows like a collection. And then his stomach dropped. Right in the middle of the table was his own photograph. Fresh, clean. A candle burned in front of it, its flame flickering as though alive. His throat tightened, and his knees weakened. He staggered back, his eyes darting around the room. A shelf stood against the wall, filled with bottles of dark liquid, feathers tied with rope, calabashes sealed with wax. And beside them, a small clay statue of a boy, bound tightly with red thread. The shadows from the candles danced on the walls, twisting the symbols until they looked alive. Ikenna's breath came fast. He turned, ready to run. But the door was no longer open. A figure blocked it. Madame Chica. Her eyes glowed faintly red in the candlelight. The warmth that once lived in them was gone. "You opened the door," she said softly. Ikenna froze, his hands trembling, his breath caught in his throat. I just... You entered the room I told you never to touch." Her voice was calm, but each word cut like glass. He shook his head quickly. "I didn't mean to, I was just curious." She stepped forward, her robe brushing against the floor, the red glow reflecting off her skin. Her face remained calm, too calm. "What did you see?" she asked. His lips trembled. He thought of lying, of saying he saw nothing, but her eyes pinned him in place. "I saw the photos," he whispered. "I saw my picture." Her lips pressed together. She took another step closer. "And the candles, the charms." His voice broke. Silence stretched between them. The candles flickered higher, their flames reaching like claws. For a moment, she looked away and let out a slow breath. To Ikenna, it sounded almost like sadness, almost like regret. He thought maybe she would forgive him, maybe she would explain. But then she raised her hand, and every candle flame leapt taller, shadows racing across the walls. Ikenna's chest locked with fear. The room was no longer just a room. It was a trap, and he was standing in the center of it. The flames hissed as though they heard their names. Ikenna stood frozen in the middle of that crimson chamber, sweat sliding down his face, his body too heavy to move. Madame Chica stood by the door, her robe swallowing the light, her eyes glowing like fire lived inside them. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said, voice trembling not with fear, but with something older, something weary. Ikenna's lips shook. What is all this? Why my picture? Why the others?" She stepped forward slowly, her hand brushing the edge of the altar. Because this is how I survive. His stomach dropped. Survive? Her eyes softened for a moment, but the red glow inside them never dimmed. You think I chose this life? I didn't. I was once like you, Ikena, young, poor, a child running barefoot on hot soil. My parents wanted more than hunger. A stranger came to our village promising riches, promising freedom from poverty. My parents agreed. They gave him me. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, Ikena thought he heard pain that was real. I was taken away, trained, reshaped, given beauty, strength, wealth beyond measure. But the gift was no gift, it was a curse. I stopped aging like other people. I stopped dying like other people. Yet the price was clear. Every few years, I must take the youth of a boy untouched by the world. A boy with a pure heart. If I fail, my skin will rot, my bones will collapse, and I will fade into nothing. She touched the altar, her fingers grazing the photographs. Ikena shook his head, his breath ragged. So all these boys? Her eyes fell. Each one gave me more years. He stepped back, clutching his chest as if the truth had pierced him. You were going to use me, feed on me? Her jaw tightened. I tried not to. I saw something in your eyes, Ikena. Something I hadn't seen in 100 years' innocence mixed with fire. I thought I could stop. Then stop. His voice cracked, louder than he intended. Break the curse. End it. She shook her head, sorrow flooding her face. It doesn't work like that. If I stop, I die. Ikena's chest heaved. Then maybe it's time you die. The words hung sharp in the hot air. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned to the clay statue bound in red thread, her fingers brushing it. You think I haven't wished for that? She whispered. For an end? But when you have lived more than a century, when you've tasted power, watched kingdoms fall, seen generations pass, you find that death no longer comes easily. It clings to you, refusing to take you. Her voice shook now. I have carried this burden for 150 years, and every time I say it will be the last, hunger returns. Ikena swallowed hard, his throat burning. He looked around at the faces of the other boys in the photos. Their eyes seemed to beg him, to scream without sound. You lied to me, he said quietly. You saved me, fed me, gave me clothes. You made me believe I mattered. But all of it, his voice broke. All of it was to prepare me for this. Her lips trembled. No, I meant it when I cared for you. Care? His chest burned. Real care doesn't tie someone's soul to an altar. The flames leapt again, casting her face in sharp shadows. For a heartbeat, she looked monstrous eyes, blazing, jaw clenched. Then, just as suddenly, she looked human again. A woman, weary, broken by her own survival. You think I'm evil, she said softly. I don't know what you are, Ikena answered. But I know you're not the woman I thought you were. She took one slow step toward him. I don't want to hurt you. Then let me go, he pleaded. Her shoulders sagged, and she shook her head. I can't. You've already been chosen. Once your name is placed on the altar, the bond is sealed. It's not just me anymore. The spirits watch. They demand what was promised. Ikena's knees nearly buckled. So I'm trapped. Tears threatened his eyes. The weight of betrayal crushed him. He thought of his mother, gone too soon. Of the nights he slept on wooden benches, praying for a better life. Of Obi's warning, don't eat too deep, don't sleep too hard. And here he was, deep in a pit disguised as paradise. Madame Chica's voice softened again, almost breaking. I never wanted you to know. I wanted you to enjoy the days I could give you good food, soft bed, peace. You deserved at least that. Ikena's chest heaved, anger and sorrow tearing at him. Peace built on lies is not peace. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she looked like a woman finally admitting her sins to herself. When she opened them again, the glow dimmed, but the sadness remained. You are brave, she whispered. Braver than any boy before you. That's why this hurts more than it should. Ikena forced himself to speak through trembling lips. Then, if you care, set me free. Her silence was answer enough. The candles flickered violently, and the room felt smaller, pressing in around him. He realized then that he was not just standing in a room. He was standing inside her prison, inside her hunger. And no matter how much she claimed to care, the truth was carved in fire. She could not let him go. The air in the red room grew heavier, thick like smoke that refused to leave the lungs. Ikenna stood trembling, his eyes burning with tears he refused to let fall. Madame Chica's gaze did not waver. Her glowing eyes had dimmed slightly, but the fire behind them still smoldered. "It's too late," she said at last, her voice low and steady, like someone pronouncing a sentence that could not be reversed. Ikenna's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" She touched the edge of his photograph on the altar. The candle in front of it flared as though answering her fingers. "I already whispered your name last night. Once the name is spoken, the ritual begins. You have only 2 more nights before your soul is sealed." The words crushed him. His knees buckled, and he stumbled backward. 2 nights? He whispered. She nodded, her face calm, almost sorrowful. "You won't feel pain. You will fall asleep and never wake up." The calmness in her tone tore at him worse than screams. It was not rage, it was certainty. "No," Ikenna muttered, shaking his head violently. "No, you're lying. You can stop it. You can." Her lips trembled, but she didn't move. "If I stop, I will crumble into ash. I will cease to exist. Ikenna, I don't want that." His chest heaved, fury and terror clashing inside him. "So it's me or you," he spat. "My life for yours." Her silence was answer enough. Ikenna turned away, gripping his head. His thoughts flew to Obi, his laughter, his warnings. "Don't eat too deep. Don't sleep too hard." His words now sounded less like a friend's caution and more like prophecy. He thought of his mother, her tired but kind eyes. How she used to rub his back when he coughed, whispering, "You are my blessing, Ikenna." She had died too soon, leaving him alone in the world. And now, when he finally thought he had found a way out of suffering, he realized he had only walked into another kind of grave. "I trusted you," he whispered, voice breaking. "I trusted you with everything. And you turned me into meat for the spirits." Madame Chica's eyes flickered with something human guilt, perhaps, or sorrow too deep to name. She stepped closer, her voice cracking for the first time. "You think I don't hate this? You think I want to hurt you? I never asked for this curse, Ikenna. I never asked to outlive my own family, to see my brother die while I stayed the same, to carry hunger that never ends." She pressed a hand to her chest. "But what choice do I have? If I stop, the world swallows me. If I continue, boys like you pay the price. Tell me, what would you choose if it were your life on the line?" Ikenna's fists clenched. "I would choose death before stealing someone else's tomorrow." His words echoed against the red walls, heavy with truth. Her face twisted, not in anger, but in pain. She turned away, as though she couldn't bear to look at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the hiss of candle flames and the pounding of Ikenna's heart. Finally, she whispered, "You are brave, too brave. That's why it hurts me more. That's why I wished you had never stepped into my car." He glared at her, his breath ragged. "And yet, you still brought me here." Her shoulders sagged. She looked older in that moment, as if the weight of all her years pressed down at once. "I will give you tomorrow," she said quietly. "One day. Do what you want, eat, walk, see the Sunday, say goodbye to the world. But on the 7th night, the ritual will finish. I cannot change that." Ikenna stared at her, stunned. "You're giving me a day to wait for death?" She met his eyes. "I'm giving you a day of freedom, before chains you cannot see bind you forever." He could not answer. His throat closed. He turned and stumbled out of the red room, clutching the wall for balance. Back in his chamber, he collapsed onto the bed, shaking. The sheets that once felt soft and welcoming now felt like ropes tying him down. He buried his face in his hands. 2 nights. His thoughts swirled like a storm. He imagined running, scaling the gates, disappearing into the streets. But then he remembered the guards, silent and watchful, their eyes too empty to be normal. He remembered Auntie Mara's warning. He remembered Madame Chica's words, once the name is spoken, the bond is sealed. Sleep refused him. He lay awake, listening to the house breathe, feeling the weight of every candle in the red room pressing on his chest. He imagined his name being whispered to spirits he could not see, spirits licking their lips at the thought of his youth. When dawn broke, he rose with hollow eyes. The sunlight streaming through the curtains felt like mockery. Outside, life moved on. Birds sang, cars honked, vendors shouted. But inside him, everything was caged. He whispered to himself, "I won't let it end this way." The words tasted bitter, but they were all he had. The morning after her confession, Ikenna sat at the breakfast table, staring at the untouched yam on his plate. Madame Chica watched him for a while, but said nothing. She only sipped her tea slowly, her gold earrings glinting against her neck. When she finally stood, she touched his shoulder gently. "You still have today," she murmured. "Use it well." Then she walked away, her step steady, leaving him in silence. Ikenna's spoon clattered against the table as his hand trembled. His chest was tight, each breath harder than the last. He pushed the food aside and rose. He needed answers more than the half-truths Chica had offered. The kitchen smelled of palm oil and ginger. Auntie Mara was there, chopping okra, humming softly. When she saw him, she smiled the same gentle smile, the one that always seemed to hide something. "Good morning, sir." The word "sir" made his stomach twist. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Auntie Mara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Her knife paused mid-air. She looked at him carefully. "Go on." He swallowed. "Why are you still here? Why do you serve her? What is in that room?" Her hands shook, but she set the knife down slowly. She wiped her palms on her wrapper and leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I was once like you." Ikenna blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked around quickly, making sure the other maids were busy. Then she continued, her eyes full of a sadness so deep it seemed endless. "Years ago, I was a village girl. Poor, hungry. She came to me, promised me life beyond suffering. Food, shelter, clothes, just like she promised you. I didn't know the cost until it was too late." Ikenna's chest tightened. "She was going to use you?" Auntie Mara nodded slowly. "Yes, but when the night came, she stopped. She looked at me and said I reminded her of her younger sister. She spared me, but not without chains." "Chains?" She lifted her sleeve, showing faint scars around her wrist, almost invisible but real. "She tied me here with her spell. I cook, I clean, I smile when she wants me to smile. But if I ever try to leave this house, the air itself will choke me." Ikenna's throat went dry. "So you've been her prisoner all this time?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Prisoner and servant both. At least I live, though sometimes I wonder if death would be kinder." Her words cut him. He thought of his own face on that altar, the candle burning before it, the promise of silence forever. "Tell me," he whispered, "is there no way to stop her? No way to break the curse?" Auntie Mara's eyes darted around the kitchen again. Her voice grew sharper. "Don't speak of such things. No one has ever stopped her. Not in all the years I have been here. Boys come, boys go. Their pictures remain," and she continues. Ikenna clenched his fists. "But I won't just wait for death." She shook her head, her eyes glistening. "You think you are different? Many before you thought the same. Stronger, braver, smarter. Yet all fell silent. She always wins." He leaned closer, desperation burning in his chest. "Then why warn me? Why tell me this if there is no hope?" Her lips trembled. She reached out, touching his arm lightly. "Because you remind me of my son. He died young, taken by sickness. When I see your eyes, I see his, and I don't want to watch another boy fade." The crack in her voice broke him. For a moment, he saw the mother hidden inside the servant, trapped but still human. "But listen to me, child," she continued, her tone urgent. "If you fight her, You will not just die, you will suffer. She will make you beg for the end. Sometimes survival means surrender. Accept her gifts. Eat her food. Sleep on her bed. Let her take what she must. At least you will not know when it comes. Ikenna pulled away sharply, shaking his head. No, that is not living. That is waiting to be buried. Her eyes widened, fear flashing through them. She leaned even closer, whispering so low he almost didn't hear. Then you must be smarter than all who came before. But if you fail, she swallowed. If you fail, there will be no saving you. He stared at her, his heart thudding like a drum. For a moment, silence pressed between them, heavy and suffocating. Then one of the younger maids entered the kitchen, carrying a tray. Auntie Mara straightened quickly, her smile snapping back into place. She picked up the knife and began chopping again, as though nothing had been said. Ikenna stood frozen. He knew the conversation was over. He walked back to his room, each step heavy. His mind spun with everything he had heard. Auntie Mara was proof that Madame Chica was not just dangerous, but unstoppable. Proof that once chosen, there was no escape. But even as fear dug into his bones, something else burned brighter. Defiance. He thought of Obi's words. He thought of his mother's tired hands. He thought of all the boys whose photos stared back at him from the altar. He whispered to himself, I won't end like them. That night, as the mansion grew silent, Ikenna lay awake again. He listened for the footsteps, for the hum, for the key turning. When it came, his whole body shook. But this time, he did not hide beneath the blanket. He stared at the ceiling, his fists clenched, his heart whispering the same vow over and over. I will not die quietly. The sky was still dark when Ikenna slipped out of his room. His heart thudded in his chest as he tiptoed past the silent guards, past the hallway where the black door stood. Every shadow seemed alive, watching him, whispering threats he couldn't hear. But the weight of his decision pushed him forward. The main gate loomed ahead. One guard leaned on his spear, half asleep. Ikenna forced a smile. Good morning, sir. I want to buy something at the junction. The guard blinked, yawned, and pressed the button. The heavy gate slid open. Just like that, Ikenna was outside. His legs nearly gave way from the relief. He didn't look back. He boarded the first bus to his village, sitting by the window, gripping his knees tight. Every bump on the dusty road felt like a warning, every stranger's glance like suspicion. He kept whispering to himself, don't stop, don't stop. By evening, the bus pulled into the village square. The air smelled of roasted corn and wood smoke. Children ran barefoot, chasing tires. But Ikenna didn't pause. His feet carried him straight to the compound of Mama Agatha, the herbalist known for seeing beyond what eyes could. She was there, sitting cross-legged on a raffia mat, chewing bitter cola. Her wrinkled face lifted when she saw him. Her eyes narrowed. You came back. Ikenna dropped to his knees. Mama, I need help. She rose slowly, her movements steady despite her age. I told your uncle not to let you go with that woman, but he chose money over wisdom. Tears stung Ikenna's eyes. She's not normal. I saw it. The room, the photos, the charms. She has my picture on an altar, Mama. She told me I have 2 nights left before I'm gone. Mama Agatha's face grew grave. So it is true. She is not just a woman. She is Mwanyi Chaimi, a spirit trapped between human and otherworldly. Old as the trees, cursed to live by feeding on the youth of boys. Ikenna's chest tightened. Can you stop her? She shook her head slowly. Not stop, only delay. If you want to survive, you must do exactly as I say. I'll do anything. His voice cracked with desperation. She shuffled to the window of her hut and took down a small bundle wrapped in black cloth. She placed it in his hands. It was warm, almost alive. This charm will confuse her spirit, she said. Keep it close to your skin, day and night. Do not open it. Do not shake it. Do not smell it. As long as it touches your body, it will weaken her hold. But listen carefully, it will not last forever. Ikenna clutched it to his chest. How long? Her eyes locked on his. 7 nights. And she has already begun the ritual. If you do not return before the 7th night, you will not leave alive. Fear gripped him like cold water. So I must go back? Yes, she said firmly. Run if you want, but the bond has been tied. Spirits do not forget. They will chase you until you collapse. Your only hope is to face her, when the time is right, and break what she has built. He shivered. How do I break it? Her gaze deepened, as though staring into a future too heavy to reveal. When the time comes, you will know. But courage must lead your hands. Remember, darkness can smile, but it is still darkness. His eyes burned. Mama, I'm scared. She placed her hand on his head gently, her voice soft. Fear is the proof that you want to live. Let it guide you, not chain you. The sky outside had turned orange. Birds flew low, returning to their nests. Ikenna stood, the charm clutched tightly. I will go back, he whispered, though his whole body shook. I won't die for her curse. Mama Agatha's eyes softened with something like pity. Then may the ancestors walk with you. That night, he boarded another bus back toward the city. His stomach churned with dread. He held the charm tight against his chest, as if it alone could keep his heart beating. The closer the bus drew to the mansion, the heavier his body felt. He thought of Obi, of his promise. He thought of Auntie Mara, trapped in service. He thought of his mother's face, soft and tired, whispering blessings into his ears as a boy. By the time the bus reached the city, the streets were quiet. Midnight shadows clung to the corners. He walked back to the gate, the same guard standing there. You're back, the man said. Ikenna nodded, forcing a smile. I just needed to clear my head. The gate opened. The mansion loomed ahead, silent, waiting. Ikenna stepped inside, his heart whispering the vow once again. I will not die quietly. The mansion was too quiet when Ikenna returned. The air felt colder, as if the house itself knew he had gone searching for answers. Every step he took echoed against the marble floor. The silence pressed against him like a hand around his throat. Madame Chica was waiting in the living room, dressed in a flowing white gown that shimmered even in the dim light. She sat with her back straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes calm but unreadable. You came back, she said softly, almost like a mother greeting a child after a long day. Ikenna swallowed hard. I had to clear my head. She nodded slowly. I know. I felt your absence. The charm you carry may fool my spirit for a while, but it cannot hide you completely. His stomach dropped. So she knew everything. He stayed standing, his fists clenched at his sides. Why me? He asked again, voice trembling. Why not someone else? Why did you pick me? Her gaze lingered on him, steady, sharp. Because you remind me of who I used to be. Ikenna frowned. You said that before. What do you mean? Her lips curved into a sad smile. I was once like you. Poor. Forgotten. My name was not Chica then. It was Adeze. I was born in 1865. The number hit him like a slap. His breath caught in his chest. 1865? She nodded. Yes, I am not 58, as I told you. I am 160 years old. His knees weakened. He gripped the edge of a chair to steady himself. That's impossible. She chuckled softly, but there was no joy in the sound. Impossible? You've seen the room. You've seen the photos. Do you still think anything is impossible? Ikenna shook his head violently. No. This is madness. This is evil. Her eyes flickered, the faint red glow rising again. Evil or survival, it depends on who is telling the story. My parents gave me to a spirit in exchange for wealth. I became something not fully human. I stopped aging, stopped dying, but the curse chained me forever. Every few years, I must renew my youth with the soul of another. Without it, I rot. Her hands trembled as she spoke, though her voice remained steady. I have walked through generations, watched people I loved wither and die, while I remained the same. I buried a brother I adored. I buried friends, servants, even children who once laughed in these halls. And yet, I lived on. Do you know what that feels like? Ikena's chest tightened, but he forced the words out. It feels like punishment. And now you want to make me pay for a sin you didn't even choose. Her jaw clenched. I don't want to hurt you, Ikena. I care for you more than I expected. That is why this is harder. But the ritual has begun. If I stop now, I crumble into dust. My body will peel, my bones will break. I have seen it happen. It is slow, painful, merciless. He stepped back, shaking his head. So my life is just a sacrifice to keep you pretty, strong, alive? Her voice cracked. No, not just that. You are the only one who has made me feel again. Do you know what it means to live 160 years without feeling? To walk through life as if every breath is borrowed? And then suddenly, to meet someone whose quiet eyes remind you of innocence, of hope you thought was gone. Tears stung his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. If you care about me, let me live. End this. She looked away, her throat working as if swallowing stones. I cannot. The words sliced through him. His hands shook, rage boiling beneath his fear. Then you are not human anymore. She turned back, her face pale, her eyes glowing faintly again. No, she said quietly, I am not fully, and that is the truth you must carry. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Ikena's mind spun with Mama Agatha's words, with Auntie Mara's warning, with Obi's voice echoing in his ears. His time was running out. But inside him, something hardened. He looked at her, his jaw tight, his voice steady for the first time. Then if you won't free me, I will free myself. Her lips parted, surprise flickering across her face. For a heartbeat, the calm mask slipped. She looked almost afraid. Then, just as quickly, she composed herself, her voice soft once again. You are brave, Ikena. Braver than most. That is why I wish this story had a different ending. But Ikena no longer heard her as a savior or a queen. He heard her as what she truly was, an immortal shadow, feeding on the lives of the forgotten. And he vowed silently, I will not be the next forgotten face on that altar. The night after her confession felt endless. Ikena lay awake, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, his body trembling under the weight of her words. 160 years, a woman who was no longer woman, a spirit wearing a human face. And he, a boy plucked from dust and hunger, had been chosen to be her next breath of life. At dawn, he sat at the edge of his bed, hollow-eyed, when the door creaked open. Madame Chica stepped in, dressed in a crimson wrapper embroidered with gold. Her beauty was striking, but to Ikena it had turned sharp, almost monstrous. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. I will give you tomorrow, she said softly. One day. Do what you want. Go out. Walk under the sunday, speak with whoever you choose. But when the day ends, you will come back. And when the seventh night arrives, the ritual will finish. Her voice was calm, certain, final. Ikena's lips parted. Why? Why give me a day if you plan to take my life? Her eyes softened, a flicker of sorrow crossing them. Because you deserve a farewell. None of the others ever had that. The words chilled him more than fire. None of the others. She turned and left without another word. Ikena sat frozen, the silence in the room pressing against him. He pulled the charm Mama Agatha had given him from under his shirt. It was warm against his skin, but not enough to steady his shaking hands. He grabbed the phone from the bedside table. His fingers fumbled as he dialed Obi's number. It rang twice before Obi answered, his voice urgent. Ikena? Where are you? I've been trying to reach you. Ikena's voice cracked. She knows, Obi. She told me. She's not human. She's lived over a century. She already started the ritual. I have 2 nights left. Ah. Silence thundered across the line. Then Obi spoke low and fierce. Bro, you need help, real help. This isn't something you can fight alone. Did you see Mama Agatha? Yes. She gave me a charm. But Chica said it won't last. I need more, Obi. I need something to end this. Obi's breath came fast. Then go back to Mama Agatha. Today, right now. Don't wait. Ikenna wiped his face with his sleeve, his chest heaving. If I leave, she'll know. She always knows. Then let her know, Obi snapped. Better to risk it than wait to die in that house. The call ended with Ikenna clutching the phone, his knuckles white. His heart pounded. He knew Obi was right. He had no choice. By mid-morning, he slipped out again, careful but determined. The guards at the gate didn't stop him this time. One even looked away deliberately, as if he, too, carried secrets. The bus ride back to the village felt longer than before. Every jolt of the road reminded him of time slipping through his fingers. When he finally arrived, the sun was already dipping westward. Mama Agatha was waiting, seated on her mat, as if she had known he would come. Her eyes, clouded with age yet sharp with sight beyond the ordinary, met his. You lived through the 6th night, she said, her voice heavy, but the 7th is coming, and it will not forgive. Ikenna fell to his knees, clutching her hands. Mama, help me. She gave me 1 day, but after that, I'm finished. The charm you gave me, she said it won't last. Mama Agatha nodded slowly. It was never meant to last. It only buys time. Time for you to decide whether you will surrender or fight. I will fight, Ikenna said quickly, his voice trembling but firm. I won't let her take me. Tell me what to do. The old woman rose with effort and walked to a shelf filled with calabashes, bottles, and stones. She picked up a small red stone wrapped in palm fiber and pressed it into his hand. This, she said, is a decoy charm. When the ritual begins, drop it on the altar. It will confuse her spirit, break her focus. In that moment, you must act. Ikenna stared at the stone. Act how? Her eyes bore into his. You must break the altar with your own hands, tear your photo apart, scatter the pieces, crush what binds you. His throat tightened. And if I fail? Her face softened with sorrow. Then you will not see another dawn. He closed his fist around the stone, his body shaking. I don't want to die, Mama. She placed her wrinkled hand on his head. Then let your fear sharpen you. Let it drive your courage. Remember, darkness can smile, but it is still darkness. Tears burned his eyes. He nodded. As evening fell, he boarded another bus back toward the city. The sky was bruised purple, the air thick with coming rain. He sat by the window, the red stone clutched in his hand, the charm against his chest. Every mile closer to the mansion felt like a step deeper into the lion's den. Yet for the first time, his heart carried not just fear, but fire. He whispered to himself, over and over, a vow that had become his only weapon. I will not die quietly. The gate of the mansion groaned as it opened, slower than before, as if the weight of years pressed against its hinges. Ikenna stepped through, the red stone tucked deep in his pocket, the black charm warm against his chest. The compound looked different now. The flowers in the garden drooped, their petals brown at the edges. The air smelled stale, heavy with something that reminded him of old graves. He paused, his heart pounding. It's not just her, he thought. The house itself is tied to her life. Inside, the marble floors that once gleamed like mirrors were faintly cracked. The chandeliers flickered, struggling to hold light. It was as though time, long held at bay, had finally been let in. Madame Chica was waiting in the dining room, sitting in her chair like a queen who knew her reign was ending. She wore a deep red gown, her hair braided back, her eyes dimmer now but still carrying that dangerous glow. You came back, she said softly. Ikenna forced himself to meet her gaze. I told you I wouldn't run. She tilted her head, studying him as if weighing his soul. Most boys try. They claw at the walls, beg at the gate, cry until their voices break. But you keep walking back. Why? He swallowed. Because I won't die quietly. For the first time, a shadow of a smile touched her lips. Not mockery, not triumph, something almost human. Brave words, she murmured. But bravery is heavy. Are your shoulders strong enough to carry it? They sat in silence for a long time, only the crackle of the flickering chandelier filling the room. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "I'm tired, Ikenna." The confession startled him. He stared at her, unsure if it was a trap. She continued, her hands resting on the table, the veins in her arms faintly visible despite her strength. "Do you know what it means to live 160 years? To watch the world change, to bury every friend, every family member, until only you remain? At first, it feels like power. Later, it feels like chains. I've carried these chains too long." Her eyes flickered, wet with something close to tears. "But when the hunger comes, it doesn't care how tired I am. It doesn't care what promises I make to myself. It only cares that it is fed. And if I don't feed it, I will crumble into nothing." Ikenna's chest ached. For a moment, against his will, he saw not a monster but a woman enslaved by her own survival. "Then let it end," he whispered. She looked at him sharply, as though he had struck her. "You speak of death like it is simple, but I have seen it slow, rotting, bones breaking, one by one while the soul screams. Do you want that for me?" His fists clenched. "Better that than building your life on stolen youth." Her jaw tightened. She looked away, her voice breaking. "You think I haven't prayed for release? I have. But each time, when the moment comes, fear wins. And I take another life." Her words hung heavy between them. For the first time, Ikenna felt her curse not just as danger to him, but as a prison for her. Yet his resolve only sharpened. "You say you care about me," he said quietly. "Then prove it. Let me live." Her eyes met his again, glistening. "If I let you live, I die. Then maybe it's time." The silence that followed was unbearable. The walls seemed to lean closer, the air colder. Chika finally rose, her gown sweeping the floor. She walked to the window and stared out at the fading garden. "You have until tomorrow," she said at last. "The 7th night. After that, the ritual cannot be stopped." She turned back, her voice steady once more. "If you run, I will find you. If you fight, you will break. If you surrender, you will sleep without pain. Those are the choices." Ikenna's heart hammered, but his voice came steady. "I will make my own choice." For a fleeting moment, sorrow crossed her face, as if she already knew what that choice would be. Then she nodded slowly. "Then may the spirits witness it," she whispered. Ikenna stood, his fists clenched around the hidden stone in his pocket. The house groaned around them, a reminder that time was almost gone. And in his heart, one vow burned brighter than fear. "I will not die quietly." The 7th night arrived like a drumbeat in the distance. Even before the sun fell, the mansion was different. The air pressed heavier, the chandeliers trembled with light, though no wind touched them, and the black door at the end of the corridor seemed to breathe. Ikenna sat in his room, his chest pounding. The red stone Mama Agatha had given him clutched so tightly in his palm it cut into his skin. The charm under his shirt was warm, pulsing like a second heartbeat. He whispered to himself, over and over, the words that had become his anchor. "I will not die quietly." When the hour came, Madame Chika appeared in his doorway. She wore a robe blacker than midnight, embroidered with gold symbols that glowed faintly. Her hair flowed loose around her shoulders, her eyes dim but burning with red light deep inside. "It is time," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled where they held the key. Ikenna rose slowly, forcing his legs to move. Each step toward the black door felt like walking into a grave. When they reached it, she slid the key into the lock. The carvings writhed as the door creaked open, and once again the red glow washed over them. The room was alive with heat and smoke. Candles blazed brighter than before, their flames bending in unnatural shapes. Incense curled upward in dark spirals, filling the air with a sweetness that turned the stomach. The altar had been changed. More photos covered it now, some so old they were fading, some so new their edges still sharp. At the center, his photo burned brightest, the candle in front of it flaring tall. Chika guided him to the middle of the room. "Stand here," she whispered. Ikenna obeyed, but his hand closed tighter around the red stone hidden in his pocket. His heart pounded so loud he feared she could hear it. She lifted her arms, her voice rising in a chant that made the very walls tremble. The symbols on the floor glowed faintly, chalk turning to fire, circling his feet. "Spirits of the old," she intoned, "hear me. Witness the offering. Bind his youth to me. Let my bones not crumble. Let my flesh not rot." The flames leapt higher, licking the ceiling. Shadows swirled around them, whispering voices that had no mouths. Ikenna felt the air squeeze his chest, pulling, dragging something out of him. His vision blurred, his knees weakened. His own photo on the altar glowed brighter, as if his very soul were being sucked into it. He clenched his jaw, Mama Agatha's words burning in his mind. "Drop the stone on the altar. Break your picture. Scatter the pieces." With a trembling hand, he pulled the red stone from his pocket. For a heartbeat, it glowed in his palm like it was alive. Chica's eyes snapped open. She saw it. "No!" she roared, her voice shaking the room. But Ikenna hurled the stone onto the altar. It struck the table, bursting into a flare of red light. The flames around the candles flickered violently, some dying, others bending backward. The smoke thickened, choking the whispers. The symbols on the floor sputtered, breaking apart. For the first time, Chica's chant faltered. Ikenna seized the moment. He lunged forward, grabbed his photograph from the altar, and tore it in half with shaking hands. The candle before it hissed and went out instantly. The room exploded with sound. A scream not just Chica's, but hundreds layered together ripped through the air. The photos on the altar fluttered like trapped birds, some catching fire, others fading into ash. Chica staggered back, her face twisting. Her beauty cracked, literally cracked as if her skin was only porcelain. Beneath it, something darker pushed through, veins black against bone, eyes blazing red. "You dare!" she shrieked, her voice inhuman. "You dare defy me!" Ikenna stumbled, clutching the torn pieces of his photo, his chest heaving. "I will not die for you." She advanced, her body shifting with each step. One moment she looked human, the next her limbs elongated, her shadow stretching across the floor like claws. The flames bent toward her, feeding her, but the altar behind them sputtered with sparks, the red stones still glowing faintly on the table. Ikenna's legs trembled, but he stood his ground. He had struck once. He would strike again. The air shook as her voice roared, half woman, half beast. "Then you will suffer." And the room closed in, darkness and fire colliding around them, as the final battle between a cursed queen and a boy who refused silence began. The red chamber shook like the belly of a storm. Candles spat sparks, the walls wept smoke, and the altar cracked under the strain. Ikenna stood at the center, his chest heaving, the torn photo still in his trembling hands. Before him, Madame Chica was no longer the woman he had once seen at the motor park. Her beauty had shattered. Her skin peeled like old bark, revealing veins black as tar. Her eyes blazed, red and merciless. Her voice was a chorus of screams, ancient and furious. "You cannot break me," she roared, her body stretching unnaturally, arms elongating like branches of a cursed tree. "I have walked centuries. I have drunk the years of kings and beggars alike. You are nothing." Ikenna staggered back as the floor split beneath his feet, the chalk symbols glowing and fading, fighting to hold their shape. His lungs burned, his heart raced, but Mama Agatha's voice echoed in his skull. "Scatter the pieces. Break what binds you." He looked at the altar still covered in photographs of boys long gone, some faces smiling, some crying, some staring hollow into the lens. Their souls felt trapped within those images, their voices rising in the smoke that filled the chamber. He shouted, his voice breaking, "I will free you." Rushing forward, he slammed his fist onto the altar. The wood groaned but held. Chica shrieked, her claws raking the air, sending a blast of heat that knocked him sideways. He crashed against the wall, pain ripping through his ribs. But he forced himself up, coughing, his eyes stinging from smoke. He lunged again, this time grabbing armfuls of photos. He tore them, ripped them apart, scattering the pieces across the burning floor. Each photo that tore sent a shockwave through the room, candles bursting, walls trembling. Chica screamed louder, stumbling as if her strength was being peeled away with every ripped image. "Stop," she howled. "Do you know what you're doing? Without me, this house will fall. Without me, even you will die." But Ikena's voice rose above her, hoarse and furious. "Better to die free than live as your sacrifice." He seized the final stack of photographs, the oldest, edges yellow, faces faded, and hurled them into the flames. The altar split down the middle with a thunderous crack. The room erupted. A whirlwind of light and shadow spiraled upward, carrying with it faint outlines, boys, hundreds of them, their forms flickering like smoke, but their eyes finally free. They rose, silent but radiant, lifting toward a place beyond sight. Chica fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Her skin tore, her voice shrieked not in rage now but in agony. "No, no, they were mine, mine." Her body twisted, folding into itself, her arms clawing at the air. For the first time, she looked small, not the Queen of Shadows, not the immortal predator, but a woman shackled to her curse, stripped of everything that had sustained her. The fire consumed the altar. The walls of the mansion cracked, dust falling from the ceiling. The ground trembled, stronger, faster, like the heartbeat of a dying beast. Ikena stumbled, clutching the last fragments of his own torn photo. He threw them into the flames. At that moment, Chica's scream split the air. Her body convulsed, the glow in her eyes shattering like glass. Her face cracked, pieces falling away as her skin turned to ash. Her arms reached out one last time, not as a monster, but almost as a woman begging for release. Then she collapsed, her body crumbling into dust that the whirlwind carried away. The candles all blew out at once. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Silence. Ikena fell to his knees, coughing, his chest burning, his eyes wide. The red glow was gone. The symbols had vanished. Only ashes remained where the altar had stood. The air felt lighter, as if the weight of centuries had been lifted. He could still feel the warmth of the red stone in his pocket, pulsing faintly before dimming into nothing. He whispered through trembling lips, "It's over." But as the walls around him groaned and cracked, he realized the battle had freed the souls, destroyed Chica, but the mansion itself was collapsing. And now, it was not just about surviving her. It was about surviving the ruin she left behind. The mansion groaned like an old beast breathing its last. Cracks split the walls, chandeliers shattered, and flames licked through the curtains. Ikena stumbled through the smoke, coughing, his lungs raw. Every step felt heavier, but the vow inside him pushed him forward. "I will not die quietly." He burst into the hallway, the black door crashing shut behind him. The ground trembled, marble tiles splitting under his feet. He ran, past portraits that crumbled into dust, past guards who lay lifeless, their eyes empty now that their mistress was gone. At the front gate, the heavy iron gave way, swinging open as if some invisible hand wanted him gone. He sprinted out just as the mansion roared behind him, the roof caving inward. Dust and fire climbed into the sky, a funeral pyre for a house built on stolen years. Ikena collapsed on the roadside, his chest heaving, his body trembling with exhaustion. For a long time he lay there, staring at the night sky, the stars faint through the haze of smoke. And then silence. No voices, no red glow, no curse pulling at his soul. He was alive. By dawn, villagers gathered at the ruins, whispering of thunder and fire, of a great queen swallowed by her own shadow. Some said they saw spirits rising, boys running free into the sky. Others said it was only smoke. But Ikena knew. He had seen their faces, felt their freedom. Days later, he returned to Mama Agatha. She placed a trembling hand on his head, her eyes soft. "You broke what no one else dared. You freed the forgotten." Tears filled his eyes. "I only wanted to live." She nodded. "And in wanting to live, you gave life back to many." Obi came running, embracing him with a laugh and tears together. "I told you not to eat too deep," he said, voice shaking. For the first time in weeks, Ikena smiled. A real smile, fragile but true. The boy who once sold pure water at Mile 1 Motor Park had faced a curse older than his ancestors and lived. The scars would remain nightmares of red flames, whispers in the dark, but so would the fire inside him.